The night of the will reading. I walked into the living room with a fresh bruise blooming purple across my cheekbone. A lesson from the man who shared no blood with me, but claimed rights to my father's estate. He thought the key was in the safe. He never imagined the real key lay in a sealed envelope our family lawyer had guarded for 18 months, waiting for this moment. When my father's video clicked on and the secret clause was read aloud, the room fell silent, including the man who'd shoved me down the stairs last night. That's when my revenge began. My name is Lena Hart, and 3 days after we buried my father, I learned exactly what kind of man my mother had married. The memorial service at Ridgemont Presbyterian had been dignified, quiet, exactly how Dad would have wanted it. Thomas Hart had been a craftsman, a man who spoke through the furniture he built rather than words. The stroke had taken him quickly at 61, sparing him the indignity of a long decline. I'd driven up from the city, taken leave from my job at Northline Quantum Systems, thinking the hardest part was behind us. I was wrong. "Where's the damn key?" Calvin Rourke's voice boomed through the hallway as I sorted through sympathy cards in the living room. My stepfather, God, how I hated that word, stormed in. His face flushed the particular shade of red that meant he'd been drinking since noon. "What key?" I kept my voice level, though my fingers tightened on the card from Dad's workshop crew. "The safe deposit box key. Your mother says you have it." He loomed over me, all 6'2" of entitled rage. Calvin had married my mother Diane 18 months ago, swept her off her feet with dinner dates and promises of financial security after Dad's diagnosis. Within weeks, he'd installed new locks on Dad's workshop, taken over Mom's banking, and treated Dad's house like his personal domain. "Dad gave it to me before," I started. "Well, I need it now. I'm handling the estate." "You're not the executor, I am." The words hung between us like a challenge. I saw his jaw clench, that telltale sign I'd learned to recognize. In the kitchen, I heard Mom stop washing dishes. "Listen here. You ungrateful little—" He grabbed for my purse on the side table. I pulled it away, clutching it against my chest. "That's mine. You have no right—" The backhand came fast. Not the first time he'd gotten physical, but never this blatant. The force spun me sideways, and his follow-up shove sent me crashing into the stairs. My shoulder hit the banister hard, and pain shot down my arm. The taste of copper filled my mouth. "Calvin!" Mom's voice from the doorway, more exhausted than shocked. "She's keeping things from us. Diane, your daughter thinks she runs this family now that Tom's gone." I pulled myself up, my cheek throbbing, shoulder screaming. Blood from my split lip dotted Dad's hardwood floors he'd refinished himself last summer, before the first stroke. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything. She just stood there, dish towel in her hands, torn between the daughter she'd raised and the man who controlled their bank accounts. "I'm going to the hospital," I said quietly, grabbing my purse. "And then I'm going to the police." Calvin laughed, ugly and sharp. "For what? Disciplining a grown woman acting like a child? Good luck with that." But I knew Gray County's domestic violence laws better than he thought. Compliance analysis teaches you to read fine print. By midnight, I had an emergency room report documenting a facial contusion and shoulder trauma, photographs from the nurse, and a temporary restraining order that would keep Calvin Rourke exactly 500 feet away from me. Officer Janet Mills, who'd known Dad from the Rotary Club, took my statement with grim efficiency. "This isn't the first time, is it?" she asked, noting old bruises on my arms I hadn't realized were visible. "No," I admitted, "but it's the last." As I sat in the police station at 2 a.m, ice pack against my swollen cheek, I made myself a promise. Calvin thought this was about money, about the house, about Dad's workshop and the cabin on Lake Meridian. He thought violence would make me disappear, sign whatever he wanted, fade into the background while he carved up my father's life's work. He was about to learn what happened when you cornered a heart. Because I knew something Calvin didn't. 3 weeks before his stroke, Dad had called me into his study. "If something happens to me," he'd said, handing me not just the safe deposit key but a business card. "Call Marla Keene. Tell her it's time. She has everything you'll need." I pulled out my phone and found the card in my wallet, its edges soft from weeks of carrying it. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin, and this time, I wouldn't be fighting with fists. The morning after filing the restraining order, I sat in my childhood bedroom staring at bank statements from the past 18 months. The pattern was clear as daylight, and sickening. Calvin Rourke had appeared in Mom's life like a knight in polyester armor. Right when Dad's medical bills started piling up, I'd offered to help, but Mom had proudly refused. "Your father and I can handle our own affairs," she'd said. Then Calvin swooped in with his contractor's license and promises of renovation profits that never materialized. Within 3 months of their marriage, his name appeared on Mom's credit cards. Within 6, he'd convinced her to add him to the checking account for convenience. The statements showed a hemorrhage of money: $800 at sporting goods stores, $1,200 at electronics retailers, bar tabs that could feed a family for a week, all while Dad was getting sicker, while Mom was skipping her own medications to save money. I photographed every page, uploaded them to 3 different cloud servers. Evidence, ammunition. The house felt different with the restraining order in place. Calvin couldn't come near me, but he could still access the house through Mom. I heard him downstairs, loud on the phone, probably with his lawyer buddy who'd gotten him out of a DUI 2 years ago. Mom's footsteps were quieter, apologetic, as if she was trying to make up for my behavior by being extra accommodating. I pulled out a notebook and started documenting everything I could remember. Asterisk. January. Asterisk. Calvin changed the locks on Dad's workshop, claiming it was for security after Dad's first stroke. Dad had been heartbroken. That workshop was his sanctuary, where he'd built cradles for half the babies in Ridgemont. Asterisk. March. Asterisk. Calvin tried to sell Dad's table saw and router collection, only stopped when Dad, barely able to speak, had grabbed his wrist with his good hand and wouldn't let go for 10 minutes. Asterisk May. Asterisk found Calvin going through Dad's filing cabinet, pulling out property deeds. When I confronted him, he said he was organizing for when the inevitable happened. Dad was still alive, still fighting. Asterisk. July. Asterisk. Calvin presented Mom with papers to sign. Standard estate planning. I'd intercepted them, found they were quitclaim deeds transferring partial ownership of both properties to him. Mom had been about to sign without reading. The notebook filled quickly. Each incident seemed small in isolation, but together they painted a picture of systematic financial abuse, a parasite, feeding on our family's crisis. "Lena," Mom's voice at my door, tentative. "Can we talk?" She looked older than her 58 years, worn down by grief and now this conflict. She sat on my bed, the same spot where she'd read me stories 30 years ago. "He's not a bad man," she started, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. He has a temper, and with your father gone, he's trying to step up, take responsibility." "Mom, he hit me." "You provoked him. That key is mine. Dad made me executor for a reason." She twisted her wedding ring, not the one Dad gave her, but Calvin's gaudy replacement. "I need him, Lena. I can't manage the finances alone. The house, the taxes, I can help you with all of that. I've been offering for years. You have your own life in the city, your job." "Mom." I took her hands, noticed how thin they'd gotten. "How much money has he spent? Just in the last month?" Her eyes dropped. "He's investing in his business. Once the renovation contracts come through." "What renovation contracts, Mom? He hasn't worked a real job since you married him. He's living off you, off Dad's life insurance." She pulled her hands away. "Your father is dead. Lena, Calvin is here. I can't be alone." The words hung between us, heavy with fear and resignation. This was what Calvin counted on. Not love, but desperation. A widow's terror of facing an empty house, of managing alone after 35 years of partnership. "You're not alone," I said. "You have me." But she was already standing, already retreating. "The will reading is next week. Calvin thinks. He thinks it's best if we present a united front, for the family." "What family?" "It's just us. Mom, you and me." She paused at the door. "He's my husband now. Lena. That makes him family." After she left, I called Marla Keene's office. Her secretary put me straight through. "Lena, I heard about the restraining order. Good for you." "Miss Keene, what exactly did my father prepare?" There was a pause. "Your father was a smart man. He saw what was happening. Even with the strokes, he made provisions." "What kind of provisions?" "The kind that protect his legacy and his daughter. Next week's reading is going to be interesting. In the meantime, document everything, every transaction, every threat, every bruise, build your case." "My case for what?" "For ensuring that Calvin Rourke gets exactly what he deserves, which, if your father had his way, is absolutely nothing." 3 days before the official will reading, Calvin played his first card. I was in the kitchen making coffee when he strutted in, keeping exactly 501 feet away, just outside the restraining order's reach, waving a manila folder like a victory flag. Mom stood behind him, wringing her hands. "Found this in Tom's desk," he announced, sliding the papers across the granite counter. "Draft will from last year, leaves everything to Diane, as it should be." I picked up the document, scanning quickly. The formatting was off. Times New Roman instead of Dad's lawyer's standard Garamond. The margins were wrong, and most tellingly, there was no executor designation, just a blank line where a name should be. "This is a template from LegalZoom," I said flatly. "Dad would never—" "Your father wasn't thinking clearly near the end." Calvin interrupted. "The strokes, the medication, but this shows his intent when he was still competent." I almost laughed. Dad had been meticulous about documentation his entire life. He'd taught me to read contracts when I was 12, made me review my own college loan papers line by line. The idea that he'd use a generic template for his will was absurd. "Where's the witness signatures?" I asked. "The notary seal?" Calvin's face reddened. "It's a draft. He was probably waiting to finalize it when you isolated him in the workshop? When you changed the lock so he couldn't even get to his own tools?" "Lena," Mom pleaded. "Please, Calvin's just trying to help." I held up the papers. "This is fraud. Mom, he's trying to override Dad's actual will with a fake document." "How dare you!" Calvin started forward, then caught himself, remembering the restraining order, his hands clenched into fists. "You always were an ungrateful brat. Your father spoiled you, paying for that fancy college, that apartment in the city, while your mother struggled. While my mother was being bled dry by a parasite." My phone rang, unknown number, but local area code. "Hello? Lena? It's Marla Keene. Don't sign anything. Don't acknowledge anything. Whatever Calvin's showing you, it's meaningless." "How did you—" "Your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, called me. She's been watching through her kitchen window. Small towns. Dear, now listen carefully. The final will was executed in my office 18 months ago, properly witnessed by my paralegal and the bank manager. Your father also established several transfer-on-death provisions that bypass probate entirely." Calvin was gesturing at Mom, making throat-cutting motions. "Put me on speaker," Marla said. I did. "Mr. Rourke, this is Marla Keene, attorney for the Hart estate. Any attempt to present fraudulent documents as legitimate will is a felony in this state. I suggest you destroy that poorly fabricated document before I'm obligated to report it to the state bar and the district attorney." Calvin's face went from red to purple. "You don't know what you're talking about. This is a family matter." "No, sir. This is a legal matter, and I have a sealed envelope from Thomas Hart with very specific instructions, including a video testimonial he recorded in my office. Would you like me to share what he said about you?" Silence. I thought not. The reading is scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. at the Gray County Courthouse. Probate Courtroom B. Don't be late. She hung up. Calvin grabbed the papers, crumpling them. This isn't over. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. That night, at 11 p.m., Marla called my cell directly. Your father knew, she said without preamble. He knew exactly what Calvin was from the start. The sealed envelope contains more than just a will. Lena, there's a full asset protection strategy, transfer on death deeds, beneficiary designations, and something called a no contest clause. What's that? Anyone who challenges the will or engages in aggressive behavior toward beneficiaries forfeits their inheritance. Your father added it specifically after Calvin started showing his true colors. He also included video evidence of Calvin's financial manipulation, bank statements, forged signatures on credit applications, even a recording from your father's workshop security camera. My heart raced. Dad had a security camera? Hidden in that old clock he built, motion activated, he caught Calvin trying to force him to sign papers while he was heavily medicated after the first stroke. That video alone could put Calvin away for elder abuse. Why didn't Dad report it then? He was protecting your mother. He knew she'd chosen Calvin, and he didn't want her to suffer. But he also wasn't going to let Calvin steal what he'd built for you. Every document is ironclad. Lena, every T crossed, every I dotted. Your father might have been sick, but his mind was sharp until the end. And Mom? She's provided for, a comfortable trust with monthly distributions. But Calvin? He gets nothing. And if he keeps pushing, if he violates that restraining order or continues this harassment, he might get something else entirely. A criminal conviction. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, thinking about my father, even dying, even betrayed by Mom's choice in Calvin. He'd been 3 steps ahead. He'd known I'd need protection, need proof, need everything documented. The notebook in my lap was filled with evidence, but Dad had been building a case too. 2 parallel paths to the same destination. Justice. Calvin thought he was playing chess. He didn't realize Dad had already won the game. The morning started with the grinding sound of a circular saw at 6 a.m. Calvin was in Dad's workshop. Restraining order be damned, cutting through something metal. I watched from my bedroom window as he emerged with the new padlock I'd installed, now in pieces. By the time I got downstairs, he'd already loaded Dad's prized jointer into his truck. That's theft, I called from the doorway, recording with my phone. He sneered, careful to stay on the driveway. Your mother asked me to sell it. We need the money for property taxes. The taxes aren't due for 3 months. Bills don't wait for probate, princess. I checked my phone. The property tax account showed a balance of 0. I'd paid it myself 2 days ago, directly from my savings. But Calvin didn't know that yet. Inside, Mom was at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, tax documents, bank statements, Dad's social security forms, all spread out like Calvin was performing financial surgery. These need to be filed, he announced, seeing me. As the man of the house. You're not the executor, I said for the 100th time. You have no legal authority to file anything. He slammed his palm on the table. Mom jumped. I didn't. Your mother gave me power of attorney. No, she didn't. Mom's voice was small but clear. We both turned to stare at her. I thought about it, Calvin, but I haven't signed anything. His face darkened. Diane, we discussed this. You discussed it. You talked at me while I was trying to grieve my husband. It was the first crack I'd seen in her facade, the first hint that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to see through him. Calvin recovered quickly. Fine, but these taxes are already paid, I said, showing him my phone screen. Receipt dated 2 days ago, so you can return Dad's jointer now. That's not your money to spend. It's mine to protect. The day devolved from there. Calvin installed a mailbox lock, rerouting Dad's business correspondence to a P.O. box only he could access. I countered by filing change of address forms with Dad's pension fund and life insurance. directing everything to Marla's office. He moved Dad's filing cabinet to the garage. I'd already photographed every document and uploaded them to the cloud. But the kitchen confrontation that evening was the worst. I was making Mom dinner. She'd barely eaten since the funeral, when Calvin cornered me by the stove. "You think you're smart," he hissed, alcohol thick on his breath. "College girl, city job, looking down on everyone, but you don't know how the real world works." "I know enough. Your father's gone. Your mother chose me. You're nothing here but a guest who's overstayed her welcome. This is my childhood home." Was past tense, after Friday, when that will confirms everything goes to Diane. "You'll be lucky if I let you take your high school yearbooks." Mom stood in the doorway, silent, watching her husband reveal himself layer by layer. "What makes you so sure about the will?" I asked. He smiled, ugly and confident. "Because I know your mother. She told me everything. How Tom promised her the house, the workshop, the cabin, how it was all supposed to be hers. 35 years of marriage. She deserves it all. She deserves better than you." The moment stretched taut. His hand twitched toward me, then pulled back, remembering the restraining order, the camera, the witnesses. "After Friday," he said quietly, "when your mother has full control, the first thing we're doing is selling that cabin. Developers are offering 3 times what Tom paid for it. Then the workshop becomes a rental unit, and this house?" He looked around the kitchen where Dad had made us pancakes every Sunday for 30 years. "This house gets a reverse mortgage. Your mother and I deserve to enjoy our golden years. Dad's not even cold in the ground and you're already spending his money." "My money, through my wife." I turned to Mom. "Is this what you want? To liquidate everything Dad built? To let him—" I pointed at Calvin. "Strip it all for parts?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "I just want peace." "There's no peace with him. Mom, only pieces. Pieces of Dad's life being sold off until there's nothing left." That night, I updated my journal with photos of the broken padlock, the empty workshop space where the jointer had been, the locked mailbox. I sent everything to Marla and Officer Mills. The restraining order violations were piling up, but I was building something bigger, a paper trail that would follow Calvin Rourke long after Friday's will reading. "Mrs. Patterson knocked on my window at midnight, holding a small box. "Your father gave me this," she whispered. "Said to give it to you if that man ever tried to change the locks on the workshop." Inside was a master key and a USB drive labeled insurance. I plugged it into my laptop. Security footage filled the screen. Calvin forcing Dad to hold a pen while he was barely conscious. Calvin going through Dad's wallet while he slept. Calvin raising his hand to Mom when she questioned a credit card charge. Date stamps showed these were from 6 months ago. Dad had been documenting everything, just like me. The final video was Dad himself, sitting in his workshop, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, Lena, it means I'm gone, and he's shown his true colors. Everything you need is with Marla. Don't let him win. Protect your mother, even from herself. And remember, a heart doesn't break, we build." I saved everything to multiple drives, sent copies to Marla, and sat in the dark workshop that still smelled like sawdust and Dad's cologne. 2 more days until the will reading. 2 more days of Calvin thinking he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. The cabin at Lake Meridian sat on 2 acres of pine forest, its wraparound porch overlooking water that turned gold at sunset. Dad had bought it as a fixer-upper 15 years ago. Spent every weekend transforming it into his retreat. This was where he'd gone to think, to build, to escape. And tonight, Calvin had decided to stake his claim. I heard his truck on the gravel drive at 9 p.m. I'd been staying at the cabin since the workshop incident, needing space from the toxic atmosphere at home. Through the window, I watched him stride up the path, carrying what looked like surveyor's stakes and a hammer. I hit record on my phone and slipped it into my breast pocket, camera facing out. "You're trespassing," I called from the porch. He stopped just short of the stairs. "Your mother asked me to check on the property, our property." The will hasn't been read yet. Nothing is yours. Everything your father had became your mother's the moment he died. Community property state, sweetheart. Actually, Wyoming is an equitable distribution state, not community property, and that's irrelevant anyway since this cabin is held in a trust. His face shifted. He hadn't known about the trust. You're lying. Lake Meridian Trust, established 3 years ago, Dad as grantor, me as beneficiary. It's all recorded at the county clerk's office. He dropped the stakes, took a step closer. You manipulated him. When he was sick, vulnerable. Stop there. You're at 499 feet from me. One more step violates the restraining order. He laughed, ugly and sharp. You think you're so clever with your little measurements, your phone recordings, but you're alone out here. No witnesses, no neighbors for half a mile. Wrong again. I touched my earpiece. Marla, you getting all this? Every word, came the lawyer's voice, loud enough for Calvin to hear. Mr. Rourke, you're being recorded on a witnessed call. I suggest you leave immediately. His composure cracked. This is harassment. I'm trying to protect my wife's interests. By marking property that isn't yours? By intimidating your stepdaughter at an isolated location? Marla's voice was steel. Leave now, or I call the sheriff. You bitches don't understand. Sheriff Mills is already en route. Marla interrupted. Lena called us when she saw you turn onto Lake Road. You have about 3 minutes. Calvin's face went from red to white. He looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over. No, but you are. He took a step forward. 501 feet became 497. Then another. 494. Calvin, stop. My voice stayed steady even as my heart raced. Another step. 491. His hands were clenching and unclenching. You killed him, he snarled. The stress of dealing with you. Your defiance. You killed your father. My father died of a stroke caused by 30 years of high blood pressure and your daily harassment. He lunged forward. 489, 485, 480, and then his hands were on the porch railing, shaking it. You're going to sign everything over to your mother, tonight, or what? He grabbed the railing harder and yanked. The old wood groaned. Another pull and the section came loose. He wielded the broken piece like a club. Calvin, you're on camera. Phone and security system. He swung the wood into the porch post. The impact shook the entire structure. Then he raised it again, advancing up the stairs. I backed into the house, keeping the phone recording. I'm calling 911. Go ahead. By the time they get here. He swung again, this time at me. I dodged left, and the wood crashed into the doorframe, sending splinters flying. One caught my shoulder, tearing through my shirt, drawing blood. 911. What's your emergency? Calvin Rourke is attacking me at 4782 Lake Road. He's violating a restraining order and… Calvin grabbed for my phone. We struggled. His superior weight drove me back into the wall, and his forearm pressed against my throat. Not enough to cut off air completely, but enough to make me gasp. You're going to hang up, he growled. You're going to tell them it was a mistake. I need him in the groin instead. He doubled over, releasing me. I scrambled away, still connected to 911. He's assaulting me. Send help now. Calvin recovered, rage replacing pain on his face. He grabbed my wrist, twisting until I dropped the phone. His other hand shoved me hard into the kitchen counter. My lower back exploded in pain as I hit the granite edge. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Calvin heard them too. He looked at the mess, the broken railing, the damaged doorframe, me bleeding from the shoulder, and realized what he'd done. You set me up. No, I gasped, holding my injured back. You revealed yourself. He ran for his truck just as Sheriff Mills' cruiser turned into the drive. Lights blazing. Deputy Carter's car was right behind. They caught him trying to reverse out, boxed him in. I watched from the porch. documenting everything. As they cuffed him, Calvin Rourke, arrested for assault, violation of a restraining order, destruction of property, and attempted intimidation of a witness. As the ambulance arrived to check my injuries, Sheriff Mills approached with an evidence bag. The wooden rail he used as a weapon. She said, "Clear prints. Your phone recorded everything. The 911 call captured the assault in real time. And Mrs. Patterson was listening on scanner. She's already given a statement about what she heard." I nodded, wincing as the EMT cleaned my shoulder wound. "This is going to make Friday interesting," Mills said. "Can't claim inheritance if you're in county lockup." "He'll make bail." "Maybe, but judges don't look kindly on violating restraining orders, especially with violence, especially when it's all recorded." As they drove Calvin away, I stood on the broken porch of Dad's cabin, looking out at the lake, the same view he'd loved, the same peace he'd sought. "I got him, Dad." I murmured softly into the breeze. "Just like you taught me. Keep a record of everything. Build the story. Let their own actions bring them down." The EMT wanted me to go to the hospital for x-rays on my back. I agreed. But first, I sent all the videos to Marla, backed them up to 3 different clouds, and made sure Officer Mills had copies of everything. Friday's will reading was tomorrow. Calvin would likely be there, flanked by whatever lawyer would take his money. He just didn't know yet that he'd already lost everything. Probate Courtroom B at the Gray County Courthouse was packed. Word travels fast in Ridgemont, and Calvin's arrest had made it into the morning paper. Every wooden bench held curious neighbors, Dad's former coworkers, and Mom's church friends who'd watched our family's dissolution with barely concealed fascination. Calvin sat in the front row, fresh out on bail, wearing his only suit and a black eye courtesy of county lockup. His lawyer, not the DUI buddy but a hired gun from the state capitol, sat beside him, briefcase bulging with what I assumed were more fraudulent documents. Mom sat between us, a careful buffer zone. She hadn't visited Calvin in jail, hadn't paid his bail. That had been his brother from Tennessee, who now sat behind him, glaring at me like this was all my fault. Judge Patricia Reeves presided, a no-nonsense woman who'd known Dad through decades of estate work. Marla Keene stood at the counsel table, a single sealed envelope and a laptop before her. "We're here for the reading of the last will and testament of Thomas James Hart." Judge Reeves began. "Miss Keene, you may proceed." Marla stood. "Your Honor, before I begin, I need to present this sealed envelope, notarized and dated 18 months ago, with instructions to be opened only in your presence at this reading." She handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Reeves examined the seals, the signatures, then nodded. "Mr. Hart updated his will on January 15th of last year." Marla began. "He did so in my office, with full mental capacity, witnessed by myself, my paralegal, and Mr. James Morrison from First National Bank." Calvin's lawyer stood. "We object to—" "Sit down, counselor," Judge Reeves said coldly. "You'll have your chance after the reading." Marla opened her laptop. "Mr. Hart also recorded a video testimony to accompany his will. He insisted it be played in full." The courtroom screen flickered to life. There was Dad, sitting in Marla's conference room, thinner than I remembered but eyes sharp as ever. "If you're watching this," Dad's voice filled the room, "then I'm gone, and you're all wondering who gets what. Let me be clear. I've watched my family be torn apart by greed and manipulation, and I won't let my death finish what Calvin Rourke started." Mom gasped. Calvin's jaw clenched. Dad continued. "First, the house at 1847 Maple Street. I executed a transfer on death deed 2 years ago, filed with the county, transferring full ownership to my daughter, Lena Hart, upon my death. This transfer occurs outside probate, outside this will, and is irrevocable." "That's illegal," Calvin burst out. "It's completely legal," Judge Reeves said. "Continue the video." "The cabin at Lake Meridian and my workshop are held in the Hart Family Trust, established 3 years ago. Lena is the sole trustee and beneficiary. These also transfer outside probate. Calvin was turning purple. His lawyer was frantically taking notes. Now for my wife Diane. Dad's voice softened. I love you, and I know you believe you love Calvin, but love shouldn't come with bruises, with empty bank accounts, with fear, so I'm protecting you from yourself. The video showed Dad holding up a document. This is our prenuptial agreement, signed before our marriage 35 years ago and reaffirmed 5 years ago when we refinanced the house. It clearly states that all property acquired before marriage or through inheritance remains separate property. The house was my inheritance from my father. The cabin was bought with proceeds from my mother's estate. Both are solely mine to dispose of. Mom was crying silently. However, Dad continued, I've established a support trust for Diane. She'll receive $3,000 monthly for life, paid directly for housing, utilities, and living expenses. She cannot assign this benefit, cannot take lump sums, and if she attempts to transfer any payment to another party, the trust terminates. Furthermore, Dad looked directly into the camera, as if seeing Calvin. I've included a specific clause. Any person who commits violence, theft, or coercion against my beneficiaries forfeits any claim to my estate or its proceeds. This includes derivative benefits through marriage. Marla paused the video. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence relevant to this clause. She presented the police reports, the restraining order, photos of my injuries, and the security footage from the cabin. This is entrapment, Calvin's lawyer protested. This is consequences, Judge Reeves replied. Continue. The video resumed. Dad was holding another paper. I know Calvin has debts, credit cards in Diane's name, a failed business loan he fraudulently claimed I co-signed, gambling markers from the casino. As of this recording, he owes approximately $47,000. So here's my final provision. I've set aside $50,000 in a separate account. This money goes to Diane, but only if she files for divorce from Calvin within 30 days of this reading. Consider it a liberation fund. The courtroom erupted. Calvin shot to his feet, his lawyer trying to restrain him. You manipulative bastard, you can't control us from the grave. Mr. Rourke, you're already on thin ice with this court. Judge Reeves warned. The video had 1 more minute. Lena, Dad said, looking tired, but determined. The key to the safe deposit box isn't about money, it's about truth. Inside, you'll find every document Calvin thought he destroyed, every forged signature, every fraudulent application. I made copies of everything. Also, there's a letter from Diane's sister Rachel, expressing concerns about Calvin's treatment of your mother. Use it wisely. Finally, to Calvin Rourke, who I know is watching this, you thought you married into money. You thought violence and intimidation would give you control. But you married a woman whose husband spent 40 years in construction and estate planning. I built things to last, including protections for my family. You get nothing, you are nothing, and after today, you'll have nothing. The video ended. Judge Reeves looked at the sealed envelope. Miss Keene, does this relate to the violence clause? It does, Your Honor. Inside is documentation of Mr. Rourke's assault on Miss Hart 3 days ago. Post-will execution, but pre-reading. According to the will's language, this assault triggers immediate forfeiture of any potential claims. She opened the envelope, revealing the arrest report, fresh photos of my bruises, and a USB drive. This drive contains audio of Mr. Rourke threatening Miss Hart at the cabin, stating his intention to force her to sign over her inheritance. Judge Reeves reviewed everything, then looked at Calvin. Mr. Rourke, you have forfeited any and all claims to the Hart estate through your documented violence. Mrs. Rourke, you have 30 days to make your decision regarding the divorce provision. This will is hereby accepted into probate. Court is adjourned. Calvin lunged toward me, but 3 bailiffs were ready. As they dragged him out, he screamed about lawyers, appeals, justice. Mom sat frozen, staring at nothing. He planned everything. she whispered. He protected us, I corrected, even when you wouldn't protect yourself. Marla handed me a key. The safe deposit box, your father's final gift. As I helped Mom to her feet, she leaned into me for the first time since Calvin had entered our lives. 30 days, she murmured. Tom gave me 30 days to find my courage. He gave you more than that, I said, guiding her past the staring crowd. He gave you a way out. The permanent restraining order came through within a week. Calvin couldn't come within 1,000 feet of me. Mom, or any property now in my name, Judge Reeves, reviewing the cabin assault video, had added criminal contempt charges to his growing list of legal troubles. But Calvin's real downfall came from the banks. Mr. Rourke's entire loan application was based on fraudulent claims, explained Derek Voss from First National, sitting across from me in what used to be Dad's study. He listed the house as collateral for a $200,000 construction business loan, claiming ownership through marriage. He forged your mother's signature and your father's. When did he apply? 2 days after your father's first stroke. I felt sick. While Dad was fighting for his life, Calvin was already trying to steal it. The bank is freezing all accounts associated with him, Derek continued, and we're pursuing criminal charges for fraud. With your permission, we'd like to use the evidence from the will reading. Take everything you need. The dominoes fell fast after that. Calvin's truck, leased under Mom's credit, was repossessed. His brother from Tennessee, tired of funding bail and lawyers, went home. The gambling markers from the casino came due, and without access to Mom's accounts or the house to leverage, Calvin had nothing. Mom filed for divorce on day 23 of her 30-day window. I kept thinking he'd change. She told me over tea in the kitchen, her hands steady for the first time in months, that if I loved him enough, was patient enough, he'd become the man he pretended to be when we met. Dad knew better. Your father knew everything. She pulled out a letter, worn from reading. This was in our bedroom safe. Tom wrote it 6 months ago. I read Dad's careful handwriting. Asterisk Diane, if you're reading this, you're free. I know you loved me, and I know you think you love him, but what Calvin gives you isn't love. It's control dressed up as care. I couldn't save you while I was alive without destroying us all, but I could make sure my death freed you instead of trapping you further. Choose yourself. Die. Choose peace. Choose our daughter, who needs her mother back. Forever yours, Tom Asterisk. The divorce lawyer Marla recommended was thorough. With the prenup, the restraining order, and Calvin's mounting criminal charges, it moved quickly. Calvin tried to claim spousal support, argued he'd given up his career to care for the family. The judge actually laughed. Mr. Rourke, you haven't filed taxes showing legitimate income in 3 years. You can't claim support based on a fictional career sacrifice. The criminal trial was scheduled for September. Assault, violation of protective orders, fraud, elder abuse. The charges read like a novel. The prosecutor, armed with Dad's security footage and my recordings, was confident. He's looking at 5 to 10 years, she told me. More if we can prove the elder abuse. Meanwhile, I worked with Marla to restructure everything. The house was transferred into my name, but with a life estate for Mom. She could live there as long as she wanted, but Calvin could never touch it. The workshop became Hart Custom Furniture again, with 2 of Dad's old apprentices running it, paying rent that went directly into Mom's support trust. The cabin at Lake Meridian remained mine alone, my sanctuary. 3 months after the will reading, I got a call from county jail. Calvin, awaiting trial. You destroyed my life, he said without preamble. No, you did that yourself. Your mother needs me. My mother is thriving without you. She's taking art classes, seeing her sister again, sleeping without fear. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You're facing a decade in prison. Mom's divorced you. The house, the workshop, the cabin, all protected from you forever. Dad made sure of that. Your father is dead. And yet he still beat you. Silence, then. I'll get out eventually. And when you do, the restraining orders will still be active, the trusts will still be protected, and I'll still be here, watching, documenting, ready." He hung up. That evening, Mom and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. She'd gained weight back. Her cheeks had color, and she'd stopped jumping at sudden sounds. "I found something in the workshop," she said, handing me a small wooden box. "Tom made it before his last stroke. The note says it's for you." Inside was a brass key and another note. "Lena, this opens a storage unit at Ridgemont Self-Storage. Everything inside is yours. Tools, wood, projects I never finished. But there's one special item, a desk I built when you graduated college. I carved our family story into the drawer bottoms where no one else would see. The real story, not the one Calvin tried to write. Build something beautiful, sweetheart. Build it to last. Dad." Mom squeezed my hand. "He loved you so much. He loved us both. He just loved you enough to let you make your own mistakes. And loved you enough to make sure those mistakes didn't destroy you." A certified letter arrived the next day, Calvin's lawyer, informing us of a civil suit for emotional distress, defamation, and alienation of affection. Marla laughed when I called her. "Let him try. We'll countersue for damages, legal fees, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Given his criminal conviction is almost certain, any civil suit will be destroyed." She was right. Calvin's lawyer withdrew the suit 2 weeks later. The financial forensics revealed more. Calvin had opened 6 credit cards in Mom's name, taken out payday loans using the house address, even tried to sell Dad's tools online while Dad was still alive. Total damage, $73,000. The bank fraud conviction came first, 18 months. The assault trial was next. But I didn't need to watch him fall apart in court. I had work to do, a workshop to restore, a mother to help heal, a father's legacy to honor. And in the storage unit, that desk waited, carved with the truth, built to outlast lies, solid as the man who made it. The morning was crisp and bright, the kind of September day Dad would have spent in his workshop. Instead, Sheriff Mills and 2 court officers stood in our driveway, enforcement order in hand. Calvin had been released on bail pending his assault trial, but his time was up. The civil court had ruled immediate eviction from the property, enforcement of all protective orders, and supervised removal of his personal belongings only. He arrived in his brother's rental car, looking smaller somehow. 3 months of legal battles had worn him down, the swagger gone, replaced by desperate anger. His lawyer had abandoned him after the retainer ran out. His brother waited in the car, engine running, ready to drive Calvin back to Tennessee the moment this was over. 15 minutes, Sheriff Mills told him. Personal items only, nothing that belonged to Thomas Hart or purchased with joint funds. I stood on the porch with Mom and Marla, documenting everything. Mom held the new keys. I'd had every lock changed that morning. Industrial grade, pick-proof. Calvin emerged with 2 garbage bags and a cardboard box. His entire life in our home reduced to what he could carry. When he tried to take Dad's leather jacket from the hall closet, Officer Mills stopped him. "That's on the inventory list as Thomas Hart's property. Diane gave it to me." Mom stepped forward, steady and clear. "No, I didn't." He stared at her, maybe seeing her clearly for the first time. She wasn't the broken widow he'd preyed upon anymore. She stood straight, chin up, wearing the confidence that came from reclaiming her life. "You're nothing without me," he spat. "I'm everything without you," she replied quietly. "I just forgot for a while." Sheriff Mills handed Calvin the enforcement order. "Mr. Rourke, you're permanently banned from this property, the cabin at Lake Meridian as well. Any violation will result in immediate arrest and prosecution." Calvin's brother honked the horn. Even he was done with this drama. But Calvin had one more card to play. He pulled out an envelope, waving it at me. "Mechanics lien," he announced. "For all the improvements I made to the properties, $30,000 worth. You can't sell, can't refinance, nothing until it's settled." Marla laughed, actually laughed. Mr. Rourke, you filed that lien yesterday. Unfortunately for you, mechanics liens require proof of labor and materials, contracts, receipts. You have none. Moreover, you performed no licensed work on these properties. This fraudulent lien will be dismissed, and you'll face additional charges for filing false documents. She pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. I've already contacted the contractor's board. You've been using an expired license for 3 years. That's fraud. Punishable by— Stop. Calvin's voice broke. Just stop. You stop, I said, finding my voice. You tried to steal my father's legacy. You hurt my mother. You assaulted me. And for what? Money you didn't earn? Property you didn't build? Respect you didn't deserve? Your father— My father saw you coming from day one. He prepared for every move you'd make, even dying, even stroke impaired. He outmaneuvered you because he was protecting what mattered, us. And you? You only protected yourself. Calvin's brother got out of the car. Cal, enough. Let's go. As Calvin walked to the car, he turned back one last time. I loved her, he said, looking at Mom. No, Mom replied. You loved what you thought she could give you. The car pulled away. Calvin Rourke, the man who'd terrorized our family, who'd thought violence and manipulation would win him a fortune, left with nothing but garbage bags and pending prison time. Marla handed me a wooden box, worn smooth with age. Your father left one more thing, she said. He asked me to give this to you only after Calvin was gone for good. Inside was a photo from my parents' wedding day, and below it, a folded letter in Dad's handwriting. Asterisk Lena, if you're reading this, you've won, not just against Calvin, but for your mother, for our family's dignity. I knew you would. You're a heart. We don't break. We build. The workshop is yours now. So is the cabin. Your mother has what she needs, but more importantly, you have what I always wanted to give you: freedom from fear, justice served properly, and the knowledge that standing up to bullies is always worth it, even when it's hard. Build something beautiful with your life. Sweetheart, build it strong, build it to last. And remember, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's protecting what you love so thoroughly that enemies become irrelevant. All my love. Dad asterisk. I looked at the workshop, where Dad's apprentices were already back at work, the sound of saws and sanders filling the air. At Mom, pruning her roses, humming for the first time in 2 years. At the solid house, the thriving business, the protected assets, everything Calvin had tried to steal, now secured forever. Dad was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. That evening, as Mom and I shared dinner in the kitchen where so much pain had unfolded, she raised her glass of lemonade. To Tom Hart, she said, who loved us enough to save us, even from ourselves. To Dad, I agreed. Who knew that sometimes the best way to build something is to first clear away the rot? We clinked glasses as the sun set over Ridgemont, painting the sky the same gold as the wood in Dad's workshop. Calvin Rourke would serve his time, face his demons, disappear into whatever life waited for men like him. But we would be here, building, growing, living, protected by law, by love, and by the careful planning of a man who'd seen the storm coming and built us a shelter that would outlast it all. The Hart family endured. We always had. We always would. Because that's what we do. We build things to last. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your experiences and perspectives make this community special.